rumor in the rumor mill is that if the United States were to go into an all-out war with China and Russia, conventional war that is, we have about enough ammunition to last 8 days. 8 days worth of ammunition. And after 8 days, all our magazines would be empty. And the only thing left after that would be the nuclear option. We'd have to jump nuclear. Now, I know you might find this surprising, but I don't. I understand it. It makes sense. Let me break it down to you. Give you an example, and we're talking about things like Standard Missile 6, Typhoon missile, cruise missiles, yada yada, all that stuff, right? From the Standard Missile 3, which we've used a lot of those already, right? Upwards to the more advanced, the latest version, Standard Missile 6, which is, whew, what they've done with that is just awesome. I mean, Standard Missile 6 is not only an SA, which is SA stands for surface to air. That's its primary role, is to shoot down aircraft and other missiles. But not only can it do that, not only can it shoot down satellites, right? But I guess low Earth orbiting satellites, it can shoot those down. But not only can it do those things, but it's also an SS, which is surface to surface weapon. So it can attack ground targets on the ground. It can attack naval ships in the sea, right? And then they got a special variant that can be launched from an aircraft. Game on, right? But here's the problem. You see, the way it works, let's say we were planning an invasion. Let's say we were planning on invading a major power, right? What we would do is we would spend all the money. We do this weapons build up, right? In fact, before I get into that, let me back up a little bit. So you would think way back, because we're on standard missile, we're on version 6 now, standard missile 6. You'd have thought that when we had standard missile 3, which also can shoot down satellites, you'd have thought when we had that we'd have ordered like 1 million of these guys, right? Now the problem there is, if we order 1 million of those, that's like several $trillions, right? Just for that one missile, right? And these things have a shelf life. Hypothetically, shelf life of like 10 years. So after 10 years, you're like throwing these things away, or you're pumping more money into them to make sure that they're viable. For viability of these systems, right? You're pumping more money into not only the missile itself, but the weapon system as well. All these things have shelf life. So after 10 years, you didn't spend all that money, you're throwing it away. So because we're not planning an invasion and we don't see ourselves being attacked, you don't do that. This is natural. It makes sense. You don't do that. What you do what what more likely we did. I think it's been reported the United States orders like 300 a year, right? So you build and design and you perfect the Standard Missile 3, and you set up a contract 300 per year moving forward into the future. So if you get 10 years down the road, you got like 10 years of these missiles, right? But the shelf life is variable because some are just been built and others are like 10 years old, right? And good thing we had the Ukraine war, because we was able to dispose of some of our older stuff through that war, right? Now, that being said, at the same time that you're going into this contract to order like 300 a year of these standard missiles, you also put money in R&D in developing the next better version or next generation weapon or missile, right? In this case, so you move forward with the Standard Missile 4. Once that's viable, once that's perfected, then you change that order from you cancel the orders of Standard Missile 3 and you start buying Standard Missile 4, right? 300 a year. And then 5 is ready, so you start buying 5, and now we're on 6. So 6 is ready. So we don't buy any of that other stuff no more. We buy 6 now, right? And we do that because we're not planning on invading anybody major, right? There's minor conflicts that we fight where we don't even need those weapons. But some major powers like Russia and China, that's not part of the plan, right? If we were planning on, let's say, invading China, then what you would see is this massive buildup. We would spend trillions and trillions of dollars and buy a million missiles of this and that and the other, right? There'd be this massive buildup, and then we launch our invasion, right? And if you look at China, that's what they're doing. China right now is doing a massive buildup to overtake Taiwan, right? And to take on the U.S. in response to that. And you can see it. And the whole point there is what's obvious by all the buildup that China's doing, because their weapon systems are similar to ours. They all have shelf lives, right? These things are only good for so long. And their stockpile is at maximum efficiency right now, right? You know, it's kind of like very soon here they got to launch their invasion. If they put that invasion off for 10 years, then all of a sudden they got to pump a lot of money back into making sure weapon systems and missiles and things are viable. And also in that time, new technologies could come online that make many of their weapons and systems obsolete. So once they reach that max peak performance, wars they gotta pull the trigger. And a huge reason for that is they got so much invested in this war already that hasn't happened yet. There's a lot invested in it, right? So they gotta fight it, and so on with Russia, same thing, right? Um, yeah, man. So that's a problem. The war jumps off today, you know, because the United States hasn't been doing a build up, right? I think now we probably are. I think what a lot of people don't probably realize. I mean, we see all the chaos that's going on in the political arena and going on with our government. But like, probably what we don't realize is that the driving force of this is moving, you know, switching over into a wartime economy, wartime government, wartime society, right? And nobody sees that. Everybody just sees, oh, just some lunatic on the loose, right? They don't see, we're switching over into war mode. You don't see it, right? Russia, and in fact, if you look at it, Russia calls their war with Ukraine a specials operation. They don't call it a war. And I never understood that. I was like, why don't they call it? So you're blowing people, you're launching rockets, bombs, missiles. Why don't you call it a war? You know, U.S. will call it a war, right? We've had all kinds of wars, and we called them wars, and we made declarations of war, right? Against Iraq, declaration of war. But Russia doesn't do that, and the reason is when they formally declare war, they put their whole entire society into war mode. Every single person is repurposed for war and nothing else. So that's why they call it a specials operation, because they haven't made the whole entire planetary shift yet. But that's what's going on with us. There's a planetary shift. We don't even know it, right? We think it's just lunatics on the loose. And the reality is, this is all about the fact that war is imminent. And now we need to switch off into a war mode and start stockpiling weapons so that we have more than enough to fight. We have more than 8 days worth of weaponry, right? Because once we run out, there's nothing left. There's nothing left on the table but the nuclear option. Nothing left. Okay. Butterman.